It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andy Grabner and Brian Wilson. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pure Performance. My name is Brian Wilson, and as always, we have with me my wonderful co-host, Andy Grabner. How are you, Andy?
I'm good. I always try to make you laugh, but you never laugh.
You do. I just don't look at your picture. I look elsewhere. This way I don't have to see it, and it doesn't hurt my eyes.
Yeah. No, but I'm doing good, except I am, we have, I think, the third heat wave now in June already.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's getting a little, it's like I'm sweating and then nobody
It's not
can
even
see.
August yet.
Not even August yet. It's just the end of June. Yeah. So I don't know. Somebody needs to do something about this. Buying a air condition is
we
not
all
the solution.
can do something about this.
Exactly.
It's all on us.
And you know what we can also do? All of us, we can all focus on security problems.
Because global, climate change, whatever you want to call it, that will become a security problem. And we can see, it's becoming a security problem for like the Pentagon's recognized it. So I think this is a fantastic segue, Andy.
I know,
you are so amazing. I don't know how Gabby deals with how awesome you are. It must be really hard.
I don't know. Ask her. Which actually reminds me, we also need to get her on the podcast. But today, we don't have Gabi. We have Anais, and I hope I correctly pronounced it somehow.
Yes, Anais.
Anais, perfect. Anais, for me, it feels like we have yet another star on the show because you're very active on YouTube. You have a great channel where you talk about like the 100 days of Kubernetes. You do a lot of talks around GitOps, DevOps. The reason I'm saying yet another one, we had Nana from Tech World by Nana on as well a couple of months ago. And it's really awesome what you're doing and how you educate the community. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Great.
But I want to give you the chance to introduce yourself. Like, who are you? Because some people may not know you.
I want to talk about Nana and how awesome she is. I'm going to talk about myself first. So I'm the developer advocate, open source developer advocate at Aqua Security. Before that, I was working as site reliability engineer for a smaller startup in the UK called Sivo. And before that, I was kind of changing around a lot as contractor. So I got started in the cloud native space at the end of 2020 when I was looking for something new, for exciting new technologies that I could learn about and document. And that's how I ended up in this space. And I have a YouTube channel and weekly DevOps newsletter. So if you're interested in that, check out the links, I guess.
That sounds somehow familiar and kind of also a little bit in parallel with Nana, actually, because she started with Kubernetes at A1, which is the large telco in Austria here. And then she took a lot of notes in the early days of Kubernetes. There was not just great documentation. And then she converted all of that into YouTube videos. And that is great because you basically say, I struggled with a certain technology. I figured out a way how to do it. Now let me educate others. And that is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's the kind of the approach to say, hey, I'm learning about it. Multiple other people are likely learning about it right now as well. Let's just write it down the way that I'm approaching it. And it doesn't only help people who are getting started, but I found also maintainers of open source projects. It helps them quite a lot to improve the projects if they see how the newbies use it. Yeah.
Cool. And then the reason why I invited you to speak because I saw you present at WTF's SRE and you had a talk about cloud native security. And I was just fascinated by it because I think, security is everybody's job these days, like writing in general good code and performing code and actually coming up with software ideas that actually make sense and provide value to our communities and societies. But can you tell us a little bit about what gets you excited about the security space? What's happening right now? What do you show and what do you educate people on when they ask you about application security?
So I predominantly talk about open source projects, or when people ask me about cloud native projects, security related projects, I talk about open source projects in this space. And generally what gets me excited is that those tools becoming more and more accessible to everyday engineers, everybody basically. A lot of people still perceive security as being this really niche field, or that you need to have previous experience to get into or to understand what's going on or to use security related tools. But a lot of the security tools in the space, in the cloud native space, security scanners, such as Trivi by Aqua Security, or open source security scanner, is actually becoming a lot more accessible to any engineer, anybody who's using any form of engineering resources. And that's something that is really interesting to me, like not coming from a security profession. I still want to make sure that my workloads, my applications are secure. I want to understand what's going on in there, what issues some of the dependencies that my application has might be having, and how I can fix those issues, right? So yeah, that's definitely one component.
Yeah. Do you see then, because I think you just said you came off a webinar. I also just came off a webinar focusing on application security, where it was all about vulnerability detection. So are vulnerable libraries being loaded? I know there's different aspects of security scanning, because you mentioned scanning, right? One of them is, I guess, scanning during build time. And then there's also, I think eBPF is a big topic, where you can use eBPF to then figure out, does an application access certain system calls and maybe does things it shouldn't do. You mentioned Trivi. What does Trivi do? How does Trivi work?
So Trivi is our open source security scanner from Aqua. And you can use it in multiple different ways. And I'm saying all-in-one security scanner because it really made this move just in the past weeks, actually towards all-in-one security scanning. Before it was largely focused on vulnerability scanning. So what kind of vulnerabilities are in your container images, in your packages, and also misconfiguration scanning. So within your infrastructure as code configuration, within your Terraform configuration, what vulnerabilities, what misconfigurations are in there? How could you improve those configurations to become more secure, to make your deployments more secure? But now it's also providing other features such as generating SBOMs, software bill of materials, of your workloads. And also Trivi has another component called the Trivi operator, which is a Kubernetes operator that you can install within your cluster, and it does continuous automated scan of your workloads. So it's not just scanning then within your cluster, you're running workloads for vulnerabilities and misconfiguration issues, but also for any exposed secrets that might be within your cluster, as well as RBAC scans within your cluster, within your different resources. So you just mentioned eBPF, for instance. eBPF is really like another solution, and we're also having an open source tool called Tracy that uses eBPF under the hood for runtime security. And it's really like on a lower level, I would say, in comparison to Trivi. Trivi is really just running within your cluster, and it's providing you continuous scans of your workloads, but it doesn't provide you an analysis of the actions on those resources. So a lot of eBPF tools that will continuously monitor what kind of changes and actions are being taken on your resources, and maybe alert you if specific actions are taken, specific resources are being modified, versus Trivi performs continuous scans on the static resources within your cluster. So whenever there are, for example, new deployments. So it's on a much higher level, and it's, I guess, more accessible in that way to a wider audience of cluster operators.
And I wanted to ask Andy, you guys you're both mentioning eBPF. We've talked about that before, but more from a performance monitoring capability, correct? So what I'm hearing is eBPF can be used from a security point of view as well. That's okay. News to me. I haven't heard that before. I don't use eBPF in any way, shape, or form, but it's come up on the show a few times with people looking into going like really deep on what's going on under the hood. So that's just fascinating to me.
Yeah. So with eBPF, the main applications that I found is observability. of and performance of your workloads. And then networking is another big part, right? By projects such as Cilium, and also runtime security and forensics of like what are the activities that are taking place within your cluster, also on the node level, not just on the deployment level, but also and the thing is with eBPF, you can do the monitoring in a more performant, efficient way. Versus if you, for example, have site containers running with each deployment that does certain monitoring tasks, it would be, I guess, less effective for certain applications.
Yeah.
I saw, again, coming back to DevOps Days Amsterdam, Liz Rice, she is from the Cilium project, and she actually did a keynote and showed how to use eBPF to get, for instance, I think the way eBPF works, you basically specify a program that should run when the kernel is executing before or after a certain system call is made. So when an app is, let's say, making a file open request or a file write request, and she was showing how to use eBPF to figure out which process is currently accessing the password file. And then you can do like, should this really happen? Yes or no? And you can actually then also see parameters that are passed to these system calls. And therefore you can also do all sorts of things like who is accessing functions that shouldn't be accessed? Are there any vulnerable parameters, patterns being used? And I think she also showed one interesting thing where she was even then blocking calls, right? Let's say, hey, this process should never access passwords. Therefore, I'm blocking that call, or I'm just killing that process to make sure the attacker is no longer there. Yeah.
And this is basically also what we do with our project Tracy, which attaching itself to system calls in the kernel, and you can specify through Rego which kind of processes should not be executed, or which ones you want to be alerted by. Yeah.
So that means you can specify policies. Is that what you do? So you specify.
You can specify in addition to that. So we have basically as part of Tracy, we have a set of signatures, they're called, that monitor the system calls. So a set of like signatures that are related to specific system calls, and they monitor, for example, if certain access tokens are used within your cluster and things like that, and which kind of applications use those access tokens. And then you can also specify additional signatures through Rego that Tracy is supposed to monitor. But out of the box, we have like a set of signatures that are more, I guess, that are more that have to be monitored, like that we define as like this should definitely be monitored. Yeah.
In our world, right, Brian, we have kind of the good old performance patterns. These are patterns that we have seen years and years. Like we always talk about the N+1 query problem, where an application, instead of making one call, it's in the loop and calling the database multiple times. Do you see this in the security space as well? Like, are there, like, if you do a security scan with a company, you already expect that these 5 things you see, because nobody, even though it's a well-known security problem, people are still not taking care of it?
That's a good question. I think generally that's one way how misconfiguration scans are being configured. So most of the tools that you find in the open source cloud native space, they have that scan misconfiguration issues. They will have out of the box a set of configuration issues defined that they are looking for, whether that's in your Docker file, in your Terraform, in your Kubernetes manifest, that they will check for something that is continuously done, I guess, wrong by users, or that continuously it is something that a lot of people get wrong, that a lot of, So I think that's how those security scanners are ultimately being developed, based on what do security researchers actually find people do and do wrong. And that's also something that drives our open source tooling, is the security research at Aqua Enterprise, like at the enterprise level. They have their own research team where they deploy honeypots and see, okay, what strategies do hackers use, and what are some of the common issues that are being deployed in vulnerable, for example, images and other resources. And then based on their findings, that will kind of determine the way that a lot of the security scanning tools will evolve.
Can I ask a question about this honeypot thing? Because that just blew my mind. So you're saying what they'll do is they'll put out like basically a treasure chest somewhere out in, the internet, and just observe how people hack into it and then use that data. That's pretty cool.
That's their main, or like from what I've understood in the past month since I joined Aqua, that's their main objective, that they really put out vulnerable container images and other resources, and they obviously keep an eye out on specific hacking groups and other entities that might try to exploit those resources, and then try also to make the resources especially attractive to them to see how they are gonna target those.
That's fast. I mean, how else are you going to get that data? I just never, it's a completely new thought, and what an amazing way to do that. That's pretty cool.
The only question that I would then have, how would a hacker know that this is honeypot? I guess, is there like a you put something out and you announce it and like, hey, please hack it, or is it more subtle and you say, I don't know, just wondering how this works?
I guess it's ideally more subtle, right? That to get the real world data.
Exactly, because otherwise,
you want to trick them, right? Yeah,
you want to trick them. Yeah, exactly. Huh. That is really cool.
It's like when every once in a while you hear about there'll be a tweet from a police station, and it'll be, "Hey everyone, we found like a kilogram of cocaine. If it's yours, please come claim it." And like some idiot will randomly show up, and then we're like, okay, similar kind of vibe I get from that.
I mean, I guess you can say, hey, we are a certain agency and we're currently dealing with a security issue, even though don't. But then it means hackers would be saying, hey, this is cool. They're dealing with a problematic situation right now, so let's exploit that.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
It allows them to put out vulnerable resources that are similar to maybe other resources that are commonly used in the space, other open source resources that are commonly used in the space, right? But you wouldn't want to proactively try to attack those existing resources that people use necessarily, right? So it provides an alternative strategy to see, okay, how can those resources be exploited by monitoring how they're actually being exploited.
In other words, chaos engineering for security in production is not a good idea, but you do chaos. That's almost like a staging chaos engineering for security.
It's a good way of putting it, yeah.
That is actually a good segue question now. Is this a thing? Have you heard? I mean, do you do some chaos engineering in a, let's say, secure environment where you can then actually test, does your security detection actually work, and how do people then react to a security problem? Is this a thing?
So I personally don't do that. What I do is I try to replicate security issues that I find online. So for example, within your Docker containers or within your Kubernetes clusters, I try to replicate those as part of my learning journey, learning experience. But it might be interesting, to extend that strategy.
Because in the end, right, if you think about it, we had Log4Shell happening or Log4j happening, and it was like this event, but then all of a sudden, a lot of people didn't, I guess a lot of organizations didn't know how to react to it, and therefore one of the things that they did, they put all of the resources on this particular problem. But then it's like, if you would practice these things on a continuous basis, right, you actually optimize your processes in detecting vulnerabilities, figuring out who is really impacted, and then kind of getting the right people focused at the work to fix the problem. I think this would make much more sense. But this means you would need to constantly kind of exercise, and this is all the idea with chaos engineering. You constantly bring chaos to your environment, and then you can test your monitoring, your alerting, how people react. And so maybe like really on purpose injecting some insecure, like vulnerable data.
Yeah, I guess, and something that I just highlighted in the previous webinar, that a lot of times security is perceived as a reactive like a reactive task, right? So I'm not proactively trying to have security vulnerabilities within my cluster. A lot of times I'm just reacting to those that maybe my scanners find, or that if there's time for it, we can identify. But if not, and if there's nothing identified, there must be that there's nothing there to identify, right? That's a lot of mostly the approach that a lot of projects or companies might take, versus with monitoring your solution. That's something that's very proactive, that you already have in place the tools, and you can be notified if there's any service that's down, or you could try to imitate a lot of the scenarios that you might find that bring services down, versus which would give you the experience, versus with exploits. It's something that is a lot of times very reactive, and especially if there's nobody whose responsibility is that to do on a regular basis, then it's nothing that surprises me that when the situation comes up where something has to be fixed very, very quickly, there's nobody with that experience who has already a process identified on how to best do it.
Yeah, that was kind of my whole thought with this as well, right? Because the more you practice, the more people actually build up that you have them available in case a real problem happens. Yeah. Hey, so you're doing a lot of education on YouTube, and with your talks and webinars, and I'm sure many other things. I think security, while Brian, right, we've covered it a little bit already over the last couple of months. Yeah. It is definitely a more newer topic, because for us at Dynatrace, it's also a newer topic because we also have a solution on it. But if you're approaching a new audience that you think should be, be made more aware about app security or security in general, and then the tooling that is out there, the practices, what would you give somebody that says, like curious as you were a couple of months ago? What advice do you give them? Obviously, besides watching your videos, but what else is there that people need to know when getting started?
I think a lot of it is really dependent on, or I would generally suggest people to not try to understand the theory and the details of a cloud-native security or security solutions in general, but really try to use tooling related to security and in relation to your existing, for example, your existing application stack, because that will give you far more, I would say, tangible outcomes. A lot of times when we focus on the theory behind what are those exploits, what do they do, how does our cluster work under the hood, how does the different components within Linux work together, and how is it ultimately exploited, we can get lost very easily, and it can get very easily very complex. And that's something that I think is really unnecessary, especially at the beginning when you're getting started with security tools, because ultimately there's container exploits are at every level of our application stack. It's not just at the container level. Containers can be exploited at lower levels as well. And focusing on all of those different components might get easily overwhelming. So I would really suggest people to look at the security tools that are out there and try to get started using them and understanding, once they give you information, what does those information mean? What can you do about it? How can you adapt your application accordingly? And that will give you, I guess, more quicker and more tangible results to understand what's going on and how to react to it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about responsibility in terms of, if you look at security, there's different layers of security. Where does one start and where does the other end? Because I could bring up the question as a developer and say, why should I care about security if the network guys do their job correctly? Then we shouldn't have any problem. How can you, so I think it's a multifaceted question. First of all, how can you convince people that that everybody has to care about security everywhere along the stack? But really, then where are the boundaries?
Yeah. So I completely understand the developer you're just introducing, their frustration from that perspective, because a lot of times when we talk about shifting deployments and security left, then we just we could end up just saying, okay, the engineers have to do yet another task that they are not originally being paid for. That's not originally their job. So it's just something else added on top. And that's something that's especially crucial with security, that if it's a highly reactive task, if it's just added on top of somebody's existing responsibilities, it will easily be ignored because it's just yet another thing to do. So if there's nothing to do, then I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to focus on the rest, right? And so that's something that I would be mindful about if I'm trying, like if I'm implementing security strategy within my team, and if I'm assigning ownership of the security of our resources and who is supposed to maintain security tooling and etc. The other thing you mentioned that if another team would just do their job, right, we wouldn't have any security issues. That's not the case. Ultimately, everybody who's dealing with any form of coding related, engineering related resources will run into the issue of having to choose one resource over another, one base image over the other base image, one library over the other library, and we'll have to make a decision of why one should be chosen over the other, which version should be chosen, and similar. So it's ultimately can only be effective if everybody is taking ownership of some aspect of it. Now, that means that not everybody should take ownership of everything. And that's also the issue when you have a specific, I guess, security team, that everybody else within the team or the organization won't be empowered to look into the security aspects of their tooling, of their application stack. And then it can easily just slip through. And and people can become overwhelmed when they are then tasked with fixing security issues as well, right? So it's definitely, there are two components to it. First of all, ownership should be assigned and to everybody, but to different levels.
It is a pressing question, right? Because, I mean, Brian, we see the same thing in other disciplines too. Performance, same topic.
Yeah, it's all about changing the culture at an organization to get people to be invested in it. It's tricky.
It is
right.
true.
We'll talk to, when we talk to developers about possible automation tasks, and they're like, well, I just have to get answers. I know I can dive in and do this and spend a bunch of time. And we're like, but you can automate all this other stuff if you take a little time, which then frees up. And it's people get, in every level of life, people get set in their ways, and change is hard until they see like a direct benefit. And I guess that's going to be the trickiest thing with security, is finding a way for the different team members to see the benefit, right? Because how does it impact me? How does it impact my job? Or how's it going to make my job easier, right? That's always the question.
Anais, do you see in organizations an increased investment in security these days, especially after Log4Shell? Like with an investment, I mean, I don't know, sending more people to security conferences, doing more security training. Do you see something like this? Or is it just equally important as availability, resiliency, performance, or what do you see?
Yeah, so I can't directly comment on the trends of how effects such as, or like issues such as Log4Shell had on the security space and how security aware people are or want to become. Something that's definitely visible is the investment in open source security projects in the cloud native space. So there are more and more projects that are popping up and expanding their security scanning. So based on that, I would say there is more interest and more focus by engineers. Another thing is that the entire, it's something driven also by the cloud native culture itself, that with GitOps, with other, I guess, ways of deploying and managing our resources. As part of that, it's really easily to say, okay, security is going to become as well an integrated component into our stack, and something that everybody within the team will take responsibility for to different levels, versus before when there were clear distinctions between who's supposed to manage what. Now it's really like an all effort to different degrees, that an engineer might as well also create configuration files for the deployments versus the DevOps team themselves solely.
What about, do you think penalties for security breaches should be much harsher? I mean, one thing I see all the time, every few months, there's another data breach. Oh, your data might have been accessed. Here, we'll give you a free 1-year subscription to Experian for credit monitoring, and then after that, you're automatically enrolled in something you have to pay for, which really is absolutely no punishment for the company. Obviously, then you had a situation like SolarWinds, which was a bit more severe because of the level it was at, but I don't think there was a direct punishment to them except that their business got hurt severely. But do you think there needs to be a monetary incentive in terms of repercussions for companies to actually start moving into this realm and taking it more serious? Or are you seeing any kinds of trends towards people are starting to slowly adopting and understand it?
It's interesting how you express it, because when you say there should be a monetary incentive, or like in terms of, I guess, financial punishment for companies for not securing resources properly and ultimately making user data, valuable data, accessible to people to exploit it. Ultimately, companies that have a data breach, depending on the extent of the data breach, of the security incident, they will already feel monetary punishment, or some companies won't even survive maybe that security incident, right? Depending on the way they're handling it, depending on the way they're reacting to it. And similar, some companies, depending on the industry, might lose complete trust. For instance, if Aqua Security as a security company has a security incident, then people will lose major trust in us, right? So in that way, I guess companies are automatically being financially punished in that sense. What I think, though, is that companies should just overall provide more transparency when issues do occur. I think there's a lot of cases that we might not even hear about when there are security incidents, because the companies they don't want to be transparent about it. And I think that ultimately hurts the users and the ecosystem overall long-term much more. It's similar to companies that disclose incidences, right? Like if your services are down, people will realize your services are down. So the company is already forced to provide information. I think we don't have the same processes right now in place for security incidences. It's very easily just cover them up. Versus actually being forced by the user base to respond to them, because we don't ultimately know about it, right? So I think that is kind of where I would say there's more work needed in the way of the expectations and the way that publicly companies are being held responsible and being forced ultimately to be transparent about security issues.
Yeah, I guess you could say the fear of financial repercussion would keep them from speaking it out, because even if they were transparent, then they would open themselves up to lawsuits. So then maybe if you take away that possibility, they might be more transparent, which would allow the community to help. Yeah, I don't know. It's a complicated issue. I just didn't know if you had any thoughts. But of course I have an answer. No, I don't.
Yeah, it's a great discussion about it, right? Like how would you approach that? Which company would get started, and why would they want to get started? Providing transparency, right?
I remember, Brian, in the old days when we did a lot of web performance optimization, we always talked about companies that were, let's say, going down or offline during Black Friday, right? And then even organizations just, they were, everybody was talking about it. But I think the difference between not being performant and not resilient versus being insecure, there's a big difference, right? Because
legality,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's very hard to compare, because back then there was a time when people were just saying, hey. And we went down. I remember there was one company, they were so proud of being down on Black Friday because they used it as a marketing opportunity to say, hey, we are so popular, our users even brought us down, right? I mean,
we're so popular we couldn't sell our stuff.
Exactly.
We're so popular we can't make money.
Yeah. I want to also being conscious of time, but I do have a couple of more questions, because I just, Google is my friend, or whatever search engine. And if I enter your name, there's a lot of things coming up. First of all, congratulations to 10,000 subscribers to your YouTube channel.
Hey, when do you get the plaque? Is that 1 million subscribers or?
100,000. That's when you get the first plaque. Yeah.
Okay. We'll have to get you there. Maybe this podcast can add 5 users to your followers.
Amazing.
And then I also see just one of the next results is you're going to speak at PlatformCon, or did this already happen? No, June 10th. No, it actually just happened, right?
Yeah.
Incorporating security into platform engineering, the do's and don'ts. Just a quick thing. What is one do and what is one don't?
What does one do? Where are my slides?
We can also link to the slides and say, if you want to know it, then here's the link. Yeah.
Check out the recording if you want to learn it. Yeah. It's a really quick talk, 15 minutes. But ultimately, it's one of those things that you want to make it as seamless as possible, the security aspect, the security scanning aspect of your resources. And it's something as a platform engineer is trying to accomplish, that ultimately Kubernetes management, for instance, is not this big thing that's so complex to do and it's so difficult to understand and to master. And with a lot of security tools, you can take a similar approach that at the high level, it doesn't have to be difficult to master, to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And I just really can encourage everyone to, we will link to all of the social media properties that you are active on, whether it's Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube. What is next for you? What's the next big thing? Hopefully, besides a summer break, because I think we all deserve that.
I wanted to say vacation. Well, that as well. So I think as a developer advocate, you work towards having breaks from your content, from content creation in some way. Right now, especially this month in May as well, I was giving lots of different talks, and I realized that in between giving talks, you kind of need a break to catch up and create more content, more demos, and also do your own research based on which you can then recreate new talks and understand as well what kind of material is needed within the space. And so that's next for me, taking the summer to do that. And then there are some more conferences lined up at the end of summer, and yeah, we'll see.
See, I think now I know where I missed you. I think it was KubeCon. You went to Valencia, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, and I think that's why, because I was trying to at least say hi, and then we were so busy.
Well, you're at the boat party. Dynatrace threw the most amazing boat party.
I know, but the thing is, somebody had to give a conference talk at the same time. I was doing the lightning talk, at the same time, and that's why I skipped the boat party.
I want to say that's a pity, but congratulations on the talk.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
But then really now my last question, because you said new content, you're always trying to see what is missing, like what type of content, unless you don't want to reveal a secret what you're working on. But if you have picked up certain topics that need to be talked about, what is it?
I wasn't prepared for this question.
You can also say, I just follow my social media profile and you will see what the next thing is. And Andy, stop asking these stupid questions.
Yeah, mind your own business, Andy.
Exactly.
The things that I think I needed is really to show how security can be integrated into existing tooling. And it's also something that I tried to accomplish with my WTF SRE talk, to really show like one doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both combined. It's actually the goals between site reliability engineering and security are highly overlapping, and you can accomplish both with the similar tools. So that's definitely something that I'm working towards more of, providing more integrations and examples of how to integrate security tools, so it's not perceived as a separate thing that has to be managed or being integrated somehow. But yeah, ultimately, I really take things just week by week a lot of times with my content of when questions pop up or when I see that I'm not able to accomplish something that should be easily to do and that other people also try to do, then that's something that I'm working on.
Cool. Yeah. Then if you're looking for a tool to integrate now, Brian, you know what's coming. There's a tool, a CNCF project called Captain that is, one of our use cases is to integrate with security tools and use it as part of a release validation. That means Captain is orchestrating your delivery and your auto remediation, and it's triggered by the new build. We deploy it. We then ask the security tool, is everything good or not? And we ask the performance tool, is everything good or not? and then we are coming up with a score, and based on that, drive the process forward. So we should look into maybe getting a better integration from Aqua with Captain.
That would be great. Yeah, I actually spoke already with some contributors from Captain about it, but it hasn't happened yet.
Hasn't happened. Okay. Well then,
Andy is a connector. That's not the right word.
I'll try to. No, I think just as you're right. I think Anais, we are in a similar role. What you do for Aqua, I try to do for Dynatrace and also Captain, and really helping developers to get more out of their investment in observability. And then also, however, on the other side is really connecting the different tool vendors, because there's so many use cases that we can deliver better to our end users by combining tools the right way. So now, did we miss anything? Do you want to say anything that we completely forgot to ask, or are you just ready for vacation?
More calls to go. No, I can't think of anything. Yeah, this is great.
That's good. I think I have most of the links, but if you have anything else, just send them over. We will add them to the description of the podcast once it airs. And I can only say thank you so much. It's always great to talk with people that are active in a certain area, because Brian and I, we always say the best thing about that podcast is that we get to learn so many new things in so many different areas. And having people like you that are willing to spend an hour with us is
having
great.
Me. It's great. Yeah.
Of course.
And hey, I have an interesting bit of content idea for some content. Maybe if not you, because you don't need the extra work, I'm sure. But when you talked about going back and doing all the preparation and research and discovery for your next series of things, it dawned on me that most people, probably including myself, don't think of all the pre-work that goes into everything people go into for doing speaking. Like, it's just like, oh, I'm doing work and I'm going to talk about something I know about. No, you're actually going and workshopping this stuff, and be interesting to see like a little short documentary on what actually goes into all this stuff. I don't know. It's just the thought came to my head. You could say that's the worst thing I ever heard, and I don't want to add any more. And I don't think you should necessarily, but it's...
It's actually something that I think is really highly applicable to developer advocates who don't have their consistent day-to-day tasks, right? And beliefs that they're working towards, right? So for us, it's really consistently figuring out what kind of integrations are out there, what kind of integrations are missing, what kind of use cases can they be built and developed upon, right? And then providing that knowledge or that those tooling with the necessary explanations and details, I think, which takes the effort.
You could do something like from idea to talk. Kind of like what's happening.
Talk about the talk.
Yeah. A little bit meta there. I'm going to go take and put all my financial information now in a honeypot and see what happens. So be on the lookout, hackers. You can't hack mine.
Don't work it out.
I'm kidding. Thank you for being on. We're going to wrap. My name is Brian, and I'm going to wrap the show. Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much for being on. We're getting slap happy, and it's only not even 11 a.m. for me yet, so I have a long day ahead of me.
More coffee.
I'm over in. Yeah, more coffee. Thank you so much for being on. As Andy says, it's always amazing to have guests on and just learn this stuff. And, I think we're all getting interested in this whole security aspect now. So really, really appreciate what you're doing. And just, we as people who like to help, just even from having these shows, hopefully people are getting to learn stuff. So I don't want to take a bunch of credit as like, hey, we're helping educate people, because we're just having a fun show. But obviously some people are learning from it. From us doing that to people like you and others out there who are putting all this content out there and just sharing knowledge with people, big thank you, because this is how we get everybody to learn, to get everybody to get better, but also get everybody to develop the interest in these topics so that they can keep propagating and security can keep improving, and people will find, hey, I hate my job as a developer, but suddenly I heard this thing about security and it's awesome, and I now have a new spark to, enjoy life again. So because every developer is just sitting at a desk miserable in my head, which is not true. I love you, developers. So thank you so much for being on and everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Wow, it's all the coffee. That's why I'm rambling now. So yeah, thanks for everyone for listening, and enjoy your vacation, and everybody stay cool this summer.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.